They say life is not what we plan, it's what happens in the spaces in between. And I never really understood that until the day everything fell apart. It wasn't a storm, it wasn't loud, it was just quiet, heartbreakingly quiet, like the kind of silence you feel in a hospital room after visiting someone you love, or the silence after a door closes that will never open again. I want to tell you a story that changed me, a story I never imagined I would survive, and yet somehow here I am, not just surviving, but speaking it aloud for you, for the ones who are quietly falling apart and have no idea if they'll ever be whole again. It started on a Wednesday. Not that it matters, but I remember the light coming through my window in a way that felt soft and full of hope. I had no idea that within hours my world would collapse. I lost my job first, a job I had poured my identity into, and when the call ended, I sat there staring at the wall, thinking, who am I now? Without a title, without a purpose, without a direction. But before I could even process it, I got another call. This one much worse. My father had collapsed at work. They were rushing him to the hospital. My mind couldn't keep up. I was still stuck in the moment. I lost my job, and now I was being asked to hold myself together when my world was unraveling. When I reached the hospital, I saw him lying there, pale, machines beeping gently around him, and my mother holding his hand like it was the only thing keeping her alive. And maybe it was. I sat beside him, hoping he would open his eyes, hoping he'd smile at me like he always did, with that unspoken assurance that everything would be okay. But he didn't, and in that moment, I felt a kind of fear that no one prepares you for, the kind that sits in your bones and doesn't leave. For the next week, I lived between hospital corridors and my empty apartment, jobless, scared, tired, and completely lost. I remember making tea one evening and breaking down on the kitchen floor, holding a cup I couldn't drink, staring at the silence like it was mocking me. I asked the ceiling why everything had to happen at once, why it felt like life was trying to break me. And you know what? Sometimes there is no answer. Sometimes there is only breath, only tears, only waiting. My father didn't make it. He passed away on a Sunday morning, and I remember his hand falling gently from mine when the monitor went flat. I don't remember who I was in that moment. I just remember wanting to scream, but having no voice left. I remember watching my mother fall apart in ways I didn't know were possible. And I remember the way the world kept moving outside the hospital window, like nothing had changed. But everything had changed for me forever. After the funeral, the days blurred. Grief is not loud, it's slow. It's a quiet ache that follows you into the grocery store, into your emails, into the space between conversations. I stopped answering calls, stopped replying to messages. I didn't know how to explain that I was no longer the person they knew. I had lost something that couldn't be replaced, not just my father, but a version of myself I didn't know I'd ever find again. But here's the part I never expected. One evening, weeks later, I was sitting on my father's old armchair, holding one of his journals. He had a habit of writing his thoughts, simple lines, quiet reflections, and I found a page that said, "When everything falls apart, it's not the end, it's the beginning of the truth." I stared at those words, read them again and again, and for the first time in weeks, I felt something shift, not healing, not peace, but a small breath of meaning. I started walking every morning, not because I wanted to exercise, but because I needed to feel something real. The wind on my face, the sound of birds, my own feet moving forward. It became a ritual, one step at a time, one breath at a time. I began journaling too, just like him. I wrote things I was too scared to say out loud, things like "I miss you," and "I don't know who I am anymore." And slowly, word by word, I started finding pieces of myself in the emptiness. One day, I passed a bookstore and I walked in without planning to, and I saw a girl standing there, crying quietly as she held a poetry book. And I don't know why, but I walked up to her and said, "It gets better." And she smiled through tears and said, "I really hope so." And in that moment, something in me cracked open, because I realized maybe pain connects us in ways nothing else can. Maybe when we've lost everything, we become the safest place for others to fall apart too. That day, I went home and opened a blank document on my laptop, and I wrote my story, not to publish it, not to show anyone, just to breathe it out, to pour the weight of it onto something that could carry it. And writing became my therapy, my prayer, my way of touching the parts of myself I had buried under grief and fear and guilt. And little by little, life started to feel possible again. Not perfect, not easy, but possible. I found a part-time job at a local art center, surrounded by people who didn't ask who I used to be, only who I was becoming. I met strangers who became friends, not because I tried to impress them, but because I was simply honest, and honesty is magnetic when you've been through hell and come out soft. I started making tea again, and this time I could drink it. I could sit in silence without feeling haunted. I could remember my father and smile, not because the pain was gone, but because I had made space for the love to stay. I learned that healing is not linear, that some days you'll feel like the light is back, and other days you'll cry without knowing why. And both are okay. Both are part of it. I want to tell you this. If you are going through a season where everything feels like it's falling apart, please don't think it means you are failing. Please don't think you are alone. Sometimes life takes everything away, not to punish you, but to clear the noise, to show you what really matters, to take you to the edge, so you can find your way back with truth. You are allowed to pause, to break, to question, to scream into your pillow at 2 a.m. and not feel ashamed. You are allowed to take your time, to rebuild slowly, to heal in silence, and you are allowed to let go of who you thought you were supposed to be, and instead become who you really are. Because the day I lost everything was the day I found myself sitting in my own stillness, learning how to exist without proving anything, without rushing, without trying to be okay when I wasn't. And in that space, I found a kind of peace I never knew was possible. You will get through this, not because it will be easy, but because you are stronger than you think. Because even now, even in this moment, your heart is still beating, your breath is still steady, and that is enough. You are enough, exactly as you are. And one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but someday soon, you will look back at this season and say, I didn't just survive, I became.